PTO points, controversial. Probably one of the most talked about things, other than shoes, in the last 6 months. Yeah, so we thought it'd be good to do a little bit on sort of the point system, a little bit about how it works, but not loads on that because there's actually quite a lot out there. But then a little bit more of like, I guess, how does it affect me? How does it affect what races I'm choosing? The kind of, I guess, the more like personal impacts of it as opposed to just like the broader stuff. So I guess in a nutshell, the new ranking system, I was part of the committee that helped make it. We basically had sort of 4 objectives around what we were trying to achieve. So we wanted it to be simple, we wanted it to be objective, we wanted it to be fair, and we wanted it to be like easy for up and coming, not easy, but we wanted there to be like a clear path for like up and coming athletes to have sort of through the system that they could progress. So we wanted to make sure it wasn't just kind of protecting those at the top and keeping lower ranked athletes down below. So we went through lots and lots of different iterations of different potential systems. We basically started with like the most basic we could make it, of just having tiers, which is basically what WTS does. But the problem we had with that is that not all of the athletes race all the same races, so it doesn't really work. Like basically when we did it, it didn't look that good in terms of who it was spitting out where. So then we played around with some different things. Like we thought the strength of field factor was quite important to kind of reward, actually, if the race isn't necessarily like a high tiered race, but loads of good people go and race it, you should kind of get recognised for the fact you've done well against lots of good athletes. So that then became our kind of second pillar of what was part of the equation. And then the third one, time, probably the one we had the most debate over in terms of whether it was important or not. I mean, I still kind of feel that ideally you'd have a situation where it doesn't really matter about time, it just matters who wins. But again, with all the different races and some of the different factors, I thought actually that time factor helps like reward really kind of good performances in terms of like if you win with a massive margin, you get rewarded quite well, which again, probably in a lot of cases is good. So then we were playing around with like what kind of weighting should you have on each of those. So I guess in a nutshell, you've got 3 different elements of the system. There's the tier, so you have different tiers of races. Obviously like PTO races and Kona are like top tier, and then you've got 4 different tiers under that. Basically sets your base points of what you can get. And those points are then set, so you've got like a set amount of points coming first, second, third, etc. That's 40% of your kind of overall score. The second one is the strength of field, so that's basically taken of the average of the top 5 athletes that start the race. Obviously, there are some races where it might look like there's quite a good strength of field, and then some people pull out or are ill. But again, we wanted it to be you didn't get a kind of false strength of field score from people saying they're racing and then not racing. And then the final element is that time, and basically with time it depends on the number of finishes, but it's like an average of the top X number of people's time depending on how many people have actually finished, and you basically get rewarded based on if you're ahead or behind it. So yeah, like the most important one is that tier score. So basically what we're trying to do is encourage all of the top athletes to be racing all those PTO races and the top tier races, so you get more of those really exciting, like strong depth of fields. Hopefully then opens up a lot of the kind of, I guess, more local or not quite as like prestigious races for up and coming athletes to go and like win podium, get points. And I think that's probably the part we'll keep an eye on this year as to whether that works from like, can you actually get enough points at some of those not top tier races to get yourself to a point of getting invited to the top tier races? Seems to be okay because we've not had any top tier races. So for example, someone like Lucy Byram has managed to win 2 silver tier races and get herself up into the top 30. Then be interesting to see is throughout the year if that still works or whether you kind of have to get in early and get those points early. But anyway, different matter. So seems like it's been quite well received. I think like the main thing for us was that it gives you that kind of clarity around helping plan your season, because you have like a much better idea of what points you might get at a certain race before you go and race it. So from my perspective, in terms of, I guess, the kind of how does it affect where I'm choosing to race and I guess how I'm thinking about it. So I think the main thing for me is it probably doesn't really affect my, I was going to say like big decisions, but I guess like the big races that I'd want to race anyway. So like Kona, for example, it obviously helps that that's like a top tier race, but for me that is the world champs. That is still got kind of the most importance for sort of sponsors and I guess just sort of how people see you as an athlete. So for me, that's still like the most important race. At the moment, that full distance is still the best distance for me. Hopefully by the end of the year, I'll get to a point where I'm better at the 100k distance. But yeah, at the moment, that kind of full distance is where I'm going to be focusing on. I'm lucky in that this year, Challenge Roth has got a really good start list. Because of the money they put into athletes generally, that is a kind of second tier race that'll have good points anyway, so that's also quite good. And then I guess in terms of other races, most of the time I don't think there's going to be a huge dilemma between which ones I pick, because I think the PTO Tour races, it'll more be a kind of a time of year. So I think like the American Open and the Asian Open, for me that's more of a decision of do I want to do that kind of travel in my big block and lead up to Kona, which like depends on so many different factors, partly on how the beginning of the season's gone, but that's a kind of, for me, that's not so much a points decision, that's more of a travel impact on training decision. My one kind of dilemma at the moment is the European Open versus the WTS long distance race, because they've put the long distance race in that second tier as well, so it also has good points. And because it's a distance that's better suited to me, that then makes it a bit of a dilemma of which race do I do. That's the one I'm still undecided about. But I think overall for me, it doesn't impact massively the kind of races that I'm targeting and the like overall shape of the season. It probably makes me less likely to go and do really random little races. I mean, like Challenge Gran Canaria, I'm basically picking just because it's quite easy to get to. I can do it kind of on the way to Ibiza and it's quite a fun race. But yeah, I mean, I guess it potentially means like I was sort of considering, should I do Swansea 70.3? And again, for me at the moment, that decision will basically be do I just want to get another race in? It won't be a high points race. It won't do much in terms of boosting my overall kind of athlete score for the PTO. It makes it more of a decision of, are those small races worth it? Because you're not really doing it for points. You might be doing it for prize money or to get a podium or for a different reason. Like with Challenge Gran Canaria, it's just some fun to get some race experience. But yeah, a lot of those smaller races now, you're probably, unless you get one that has quite good strength of field, but even with that, like you're not going to be getting mega points.